Players Club. I am Keisha, and I am with Brianna.
What's up? What's up? What's up?
She's back.
Love to see it. Love to see it.
And I think she's back forever. I'm speaking into existence.
We're prophesying today, y'all.
She's here forever. So, on this episode, we have did some reading on Hagar. And if
So
you
it's
don't,
Hagar,
yeah,
not
if you,
Hagar.
hey, it's Hagar.
I don't know. That's what I'm be saying. See, everybody says it so differently.
Hagar. I'll take that.
Hagar.
Okay, so Hagar, Genesis, chapter
Yeah.
16
And
through
21.
21.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you don't know who that is and that story about it, go read it because we're not going to go into all of that. But I want to start a series on black women in the Bible. I was kind of like feeling away one day and I kind of just Googled like various black women in the Bible. And I got a list of them. So I found all the reading interesting and I wanted to just dissect them all. So we're going to start first with Hagar. And it's important for you to go read just because we're not reading this story and I want people to understand their own interpretation for what it's for. But let's get into it. So, reading Hagar. How'd you feel about it?
You know, I felt a lot of ways, actually. I felt like it was a good representation of when you're in a place where you don't feel seen, God will always find you. But I couldn't help but feel some type of way towards Sarah the entire time.
Yeah.
Or Sarai, because she wasn't Sarah yet.
Yeah.
So Sarai. But I really could not help but really feel some type of way the entire time. Like, ma'am, you done concocted this whole plan, and then you treat me poorly, and then you make me get outcasted, and then, like, it was just so many things. So,
Yeah.
but I try not to focus on that. I really did try to take away that, like, okay, this is a real good example of in those moments when you are just being obedient, because she was an Egyptian servant. So she's just doing what she's ordained to do when she's being told and instructed to do. Even in those moments when you are where you feel you're being obedient and you're being treated wrong, and when you hit like a breaking point and you feel like no one sees me, God does. So I tried to focus on that, but like my animosity towards Sarai was just growing each word I read. Truly,
She was wild.
She was unhinged.
Yeah. And before we get into Hagar, because the whole purpose was for me to find black women in the Bible or whatever, but to just touch on Sarah because it's very important. I'm assuming she's a white woman, of course, because they didn't label her as a black woman. And geographically, she's not from Egypt or from these African countries that we know of. So, of course, she's not. But the question I had written from her was like, okay, so knowing her whole story, and like we talked about, she was so impatient on having a child that she welcomed her servant into her home. And so it made me come up with the question that be like coming about in not just our culture, but just any woman's question, like welcoming a woman into your home for your lack thereof. I told you. Because I feel like black or white, there's women that think that because I can't do X, Y, and Z, I need to add a significant other. And it touches on the base of having like polygamous or polyamorous relationships and things that I once thought was like, okay, that's kind of cool. But as I grew in my womanhood, nah, if I'm all the woman you need, I'm not welcoming nobody else. So like in this story and situation, you know, Sarah couldn't have kids. And so she welcomed her, you know, just so happened to be black servant into her bedroom so that she could fulfill these things that she needed. And so, like, my question is, would you welcome a woman?
Girl, don't even finish asking your question. I'm trying to learn how to bake so my man don't gotta ask no other female to bake him an apple pie. No. No. She can no.
No, because women
I don't
do
got the
that.
no. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. No.
Women do that.
And
I
good
know
for
women
them.
that be like,
Amen. Good for them.
I don't want to have kids, but I'll cook and clean so we can get another woman to have children.
Absolutely not. I don't want.
But I feel like this is what happens in real life times because, like, for instance, when I used to watch them, the Mormon people and how they do that, and they'll welcome other people in their home to like, oh, just be the cook, and then she ends up having children by the husband. Now all of a sudden she's being mean to that woman. They can't exist in the same home, but I think it just draws back to literally what the plan God has for us. He mates us with one person. He does not call for us to live like it's such. And I know other religions allow people to have multiple wives and do other things, but specifically in Christianity, like, that's not what is laid out. And I truly feel like it because even women that I don't personally know any Muslim women, but from the things I observe and even in the Mormon culture that I observe, having another woman in your household just breathes, what is the right word? Breathes with a D. Some type of jealousy just because as women, I don't even think as women, as humans, we are territorial because that's for men and women. We want what's for us, and we're not in a place to be trying to share that and deal with that. So when you bring another woman in and then she can do something you can't, not something you don't prefer, something you can't, you gon' look at her a certain way. Even if in the beginning it's cool, at some point in time when any insecurity sets in, it goes left.
There's no circumstance where you gonna see me fostering some woman to redeem my lack in regards to my man.
Yeah.
I don't know if I call me possessive, call me territorial, call me immature. I don't care what you call me behind that one, but I am not one of those women who is accepting of all. And there will not be anybody who is going to aid my man in something I can't. Then I need to learn how to do it. Or find a resource that's mutually beneficial for the both of us. It doesn't jeopardize our relationship because there's just no way. There's just no way. I'm selfish like that. I need mines. I need all mines, all of it.
And I feel that, and I wouldn't do it. And that's why I feel like my journey on just growing in my faith and being with a man of God, because I don't just hypothetically say I couldn't have children. If God brings me a partner that is so fixated on having children to the point where we have to go get a surrogate or we have to do in vitro, I feel like no. But I understand the beauty in what that is and how people how people use that.
I just don't feel like God will put me in a position where he would know that I am incapable of breeding children.
Right.
And I'm paired with a man who is desiring something
right.
like that.
And that's my point.
That's too much of a heartache in different heart postures for me.
Because after carrying a child, to imagine someone carry it for me and I'm in a position where I don't or I can't, I lose the connection that I have. Because even with my son, there's moments where things get hard, but the thought that I grew you in my belly and birthed you adds a whole nother layer of love and a whole nother layer of commitment to me that I think that I wouldn't get from birth or having someone do it for me. And I think that goes in the same context of like when we want things we can't have and we'll work hard for them and we'll get them and then it wasn't even designed for us. And it's not to say that those things can't be beautiful, but it's no different than being unaligned with your purpose. And I think when people put so much emphasis on, oh, I'm a woman, I have to create children, or this is something, like we all want something sometimes we can't have. And that's just the reality of being human, I feel like. So being able to accept that children might not be for you is just a reality you have to accept. But I also know that inside, I said also twice, inside the Bible, there are stories of women like Sarah who could not produce children, but then miraculously did. And I think that's not a matter of you couldn't produce. It was a matter of your patience and God's timing.
Absolutely.
Because a doctor, and there's plenty of women today that will have stories that
Absolutely.
say like,
Absolutely.
oh, I was told I couldn't have children. And then at age whatever, I produced a child. Well,
Yeah.
it's about God's timing no matter what.
I mean, that's also, and to piggyback off of that, that just goes to show, like, I had wrote in my Bible that Sarai's impulsive decisions had lasting effects. She affected a whole nother generation
Yeah.
off of her impatience. But then it also, to add off of that, goes to show how God's grace works. It's way bigger than a human's mistake.
Yeah.
Or our infractions that we commit while we're down here on earth.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you do. If God wants it to happen, it will happen. Period. Which just goes to show like how powerful He is.
Because I was saying in that moment that had she waited, and I know if was a fifth, whatever, had she waited and did things on God's timing, she could have used that time that she was without child to grow. I ain't even gonna say heal because I don't know what she probably ain't had no hurt. I don't know.
I don't even.
But she could have healed, or she could have grown in her womanhood to get to that point. Because, like we just said, if we read further, she bred 2 children who were at each other's necks constantly and fighting for the attention of their father. And it wasn't just because naturally she was putting the bug in them kids' back. And basically having them pitting each other against each other for their fortune and for their father's,
Inheritance,
grace. Yeah,
right,
inheritance. And so, like, her own insecurities projected onto them kids in other ways.
It led her to have a child at an old age. It was.
Yeah.
I feel like the words that are used in the Bible matter, like the specific words that are used. And he specified that when she conceived, she was at an old age. Which goes to show the impatience and lack of obedience that went down prior to her receiving what she desired the most.
Yeah.
She wanted a child decades before she actually had one.
Yeah.
But because she did not believe in him all the way and had her own doubt and maneuvered her own plan and tried to work outside what he already had destined, it pushed her blessings back.
Yeah.
I'm really not trying to be like that.
And
I'm really not.
And that's good because in a young age, you can definitely want things just off of, no different than a child. We want things because we see them, they're shiny, and we ain't prepared, or nor do we know the lasting effects or the work that comes along with the things that we desire. We just desire them and we want them, and we don't even know nothing that comes with them. We just see them and it looks good and we ask for that. But wisdom comes and it's like, ooh, I didn't ask for something I don't think I really want, and it's too late. Certain things you can get rid of, but with a child, it's too late. You've already got there and done that. So it's no turning back. But I don't want to spend too much on Sarah because Sarai, whatever. I don't want to spend too much time on her because we ain't talking about her today. We're talking about the first single mother. That's how I feel. That's the first single mother of the Bible. And she coincidentally is a black woman.
And you want to know what's crazy? Something that just came to mind about that is that you recognizing that, it's so, perspective is so important. Perception is so important. I am not a single black mom. I did not catch that detail. Though I read the same facts as you when we read the same story, I did not catch that detail. So that's interesting to me that she even called that out. While I while I understand she's Egyptian, she's black, she was, and all these other things that she had to her, that is not even something that stood out to me.
Yeah, that's what stood out to me.
Well, that makes sense.
As a single black woman,
that makes
what
sense,
stood out.
though. That makes sense. That's interesting. I don't know. I found that interesting.
And so with that, with her being the first single black woman, okay, so from her story, okay, given that someone's already read this, she goes and she obeys her job. And to me, this is a job, even though she's a servant. She obeyed her boss and she did what she was told, right? And so then she has this child. Her boss's wife, I mean, that's still her boss, is being rude to her. She's now jealous of her because she has something about her that she does not have. And that also touched me too, because as a black woman, when we can do things that other race women cannot, we tend to be the one that gets treated like disposable and we're not for, but we made what you couldn't make happen, right? But now we have to suffer the back end of being a single mother, right? So then we go and we do that, and this echo then came up. So we go and do that, and all in the story, okay, so she goes off, she is being treated bad, and she doesn't know what to do, right? And then she gets to the temple, and she's crying, weeping, constant, and I can relate to that because I remember being pregnant with this child, debating on if I wanted to have my son or not, feeling like this is what I wanted to do, but also being so scared and don't even know how to pray, can't do nothing but cry, and then coming about and deciding to have him and trusting in God. And, you know, she got a word from him all the way down to what she should name him, right? However, even with that message of him saying, go back and I will bless you, you still got to trust the process because it's not like a snap of a finger, all of this
Absolutely,
transpires.
because him telling you to go back, you know you're going back to a woman that do not like you.
Right.
And had you sent away in the first place.
Right.
Doesn't like your son, even though she concocted this entire plan on her own due to her own impatience.
Yeah.
So obviously you have to know that I'm not going back to a pleasant situation.
No.
Which
It's
is
not
not
gonna be
something that's
easy.
easy for anybody to do.
Yep. Yep. And if I could say anything to black women, that single black mothers that are listening, if you don't find no relation in that of having to do work that is not something we choose to do or sounds pleasant on paper or does not feel good, but it has a ultimate benefit, tap into Hagar.
To your child?
Yeah.
To your child. Yeah, no, I understand that. Yeah.
So she goes back, right? She goes back and she does that and she has the baby. And then once she has the baby, once Sarai gets pregnant and she's ready to have her own, now she's like, get rid of her. We don't want nothing to do with her. Send her off. That's crazy. And to speak to that as a single mother, because dealing with a man who has a... I didn't even write this in my notes. Okay, so dealing with a man... So having a son by a man who ultimately ends up getting married and is married to another used-to-be single mother, for her to say to not have anything to do with your child for her own feelings was wild to me.
Yeah,
because
but
you know where I come from. You
right,
don't have a baby. You don't have her son's father is not in her life. She met my baby's daddy and got married and reaped the benefits of having now a father figure for her son and stability. But then to say don't have nothing to do with that one is crazy to me.
Absolutely.
That's crazy.
But what also stood out to me off of that alone was that, okay, so Genesis 21, chapter 11, it literally says, the matter distressed Abraham greatly because it concerned his son.
Talk about it.
But God said to him, do not be so distressed about the boy and your slave woman. Listen to whatever Sarah tells you because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. I will make the son of the slave into a nation also because he is your offspring. So that to me spoke to the position of the man that you chose. Period. Because at the end of the day, yes, Sarah might be, she got some diabolical thoughts going on in her head, truly. Ain't no way, right? But because Adam is positioned where he's supposed to be, that tells me right there that he didn't just go and act.
Yeah.
He had a conversation with God. God let him know, your son's going to be all right.
Yeah.
So you can go ahead and listen to your wife because I have already worked that one out. I think there's power behind that as well.
I love you, friend. No, because I ain't get that the first time.
You get me?
Because I'm at Sarah neck because I feel like
No,
I'm living
I'm
this
not.
situation.
I'm not disregarding Sarah
you're
because
not.
she's on my last nerve.
But
truly.
there's so much similarity in this story, and even what you just said brought me a whole nother layer. Because again, if I'm being transparent and I'm being vulnerable, this is exactly how my situation is. His now wife doesn't want him to have anything to do with my child, right? And he has spoken to me about how he has felt and talked to God about what he should do, but at the same time, he's trying to obey this woman's feelings. And here I am on the other end of like, how do you have a child you want nothing to do with? Because I'm coming from the perspective I've raised him and I've grown him. I would never turn my back on him. But at the same time, what he had in his conversation with God, given he had it or not, God is always working in my favor. So if I can relate this situation to mine and not having my son's father in his life, that's so freeing to know that, like, you're not around not only because your wife said so, but because you know God already told you we're going to be straight. And even though right now, here currently in this situation, things might be rocky for me, but to know maybe in a few years, everything's going to be straight is so healing and also much comfort because I'd be like, why?
But
You
I
have
feel like that's
these riches and you don't want to bring this to my son. That's crazy.
I feel like that is the purpose of Hagar's story, though, is to literally exemplify and reveal that Hagar, a mistreated woman, was literally seen and comforted by God, no matter how insignificant we feel. So while you might feel like you have these extra hardships that come with being a single mother, it doesn't negate the fact that God is right there.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's hard, it's difficult. No woman wants that journey if they can help it to be different. But it doesn't change. I think that's the entire point of her story.
Yeah.
That's the reason it got recorded in the Bible. Because, yeah, it gets hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, the man that you had a child with might not even respect you enough to give you what you need when he sends you off.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? You can be put in all these different scenarios that evoke such rage and anger.
Yeah.
But if you have the discipline and the faith to believe that genuinely God is right there, even in those moments when you feel like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Like, truly.
Yeah.
All I've been doing is being obedient. And this is what I get? Like,
Yeah.
this is what I get for real?
Yeah.
Like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
But there's a purpose for that.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a power between a mother and the love she has for the child she creates herself. Because to be told to go back somewhere where you know you're about to be mistreated off the faith that your son is going to be okay, there's a lot of power in the love that you got in between that connection to even move like that. Because there's a lot of time in between now and when your son receives those blessings.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like you already know what you're about to endure, but if that's the point of your faith in God. Because even when Sarai or Abraham sent them away with barely enough water, and then they got out there and they were thirsty and dehydrated and about to pass out and crash out, God literally created a well of water, more than what they needed. You get what I'm saying? So I feel like there's a reason why that story was placed in the Bible, because it's a test of your faith even through hardship in that single, now that you pointed out to me, in that story of a single woman dealing with her child and whatever undesirable situation she might be in with the sperm donor. Because essentially I agree with you when you said, how can you have a child and want nothing to do with them? At that point, you become a sperm donor, because the Father, God, how God is so nurturing and all up and through our business, as a father, there's no way you would not want to have the same relationship with your son or daughter, child, or whatever. But I just wanted to point that out.
No, but I appreciate it because I wasn't ready for that. I skipped over that. And I'm going to get to the parts that also stuck out to me, but I needed that. And just to stroke my own ego, I knew I didn't want to do this with nobody else because, listen, I didn't hear that. Because even when I think about, I mean, you know my life personally, I came back off the strength of,
What do you mean you knew you don't want to do this? Like,
oh, no, like, I didn't know I didn't want to do this show with nobody else but you. Because I don't know if somebody else would have just talked to me. Like, the same way you just say, I just pointed out something for you and you just pointed out something for me, that we read the same thing and got two different things.
Yeah.
That also, like, I'm trying to look away and also kind of keep my cool because I'm not trying to cry and I'm already emotional. So we're not going to do that. But moving to Arizona and trusting him to do something, go back to a place I already knew that mistreated me.
Yeah.
Then for everything to unfold the way it unfolded.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
So I just kind of like hit you a little bit with that.
So it's just kind of like, okay, cool. But the similarities along that though is when she left out and he sent her off with the little bit, and once that ran out, and I'm in that situation where it ran out, the water and food, bread he sent her with, it's gone. It's gone. All the bread and water he sent me with is gone. However, she's out in that desert and she's ready to give up, and she puts him aside and just lets him die and tries to turn her head and not even watch. And in that moment where she thinks everything has failed, God speaks to her, or he sends an angel to speak to her and let her know, go get your child. Over there is your benefit. Go grab him and move along. And everything is cool from there. And then she goes on. They live a bountiful life. He, promises, as he did in the beginning, to, Abraham, which she didn't know. She wasn't present in that conversation Abraham had with God. But she's now finding out that your son is blessed. He is going to rule his own nation. He's going to be a leader of his own land, and y'all will be okay, right? And so they go on to live that. And then even further, God provides. He gives them shelter. He gives them money, and he makes Ishmael a king and has his own place and his own leader and his own business and things of such. And just speaking on that, like, it highlighted the importance to me of how putting your trust in men is not where you should go. Even if you are even married, trust in God always.
Absolutely.
Because he's working with all things, because we never know what can go on the human level. We can't be trusted at all. We have plenty of Adam and Eve. You can't trust your own flesh. So, like, going on, like, even when she came and went back and put her trust in him, God still let her know that's not who you was trusting. It's me who you're trusting. And just like I delivered there, I'll deliver here. So when I read this story, it gave me more, healing in this space that I'm in right now out here, and just understanding that even when things don't look the way it looked, like, continue to focus on me, because although he sent you with what he sent you with and is gone, I made that happen, just like I'm going to make this over here happen. Yeah. As long as you keep, walking and doing as such. But it also offers so much peace for my son, because it's my main focus. Like, I don't want him to suffer the consequences of my actions. So I always want him to live this life of, like, I don't want to say perfection, but it's almost like perfection. I don't want my baby to hurt the way I hurt. I don't want him to be a product of this environment that I think is such, but in that, I think I lose sight of, like, a product of an environment. If you trust in God, he gonna churn anything out for your good.
Absolutely. And
that
that makes me, for one, Hagar, however her name is pronounced, she was one of the very few women who had a direct encounter with God himself. I feel like that is very important.
Because I was reading, like, where do I gotta go to cry?
Like, I feel like that's very important. Like, no, genuinely. Like, I feel like she was, like, out of all the women and men in the Bible who had strong relationships with the Lord, she was one of the few women in the Bible as a slave. So feeling unseen, feeling unheard, feeling, like, not worthy, adhering to rules and regulations that probably went against her own morals and values and all types of things. She was one of the few women off of her faith alone who directly had an encounter with God. So I just wanted to make that a note because I feel like that was very important. But I really wanted to say that at the end of the story in the Bible in chapter 21 with Hagar and Ishmael, I found it to be very interesting that, single women who are taking care of their sons specifically, I know that can be easy. And there's a lot of hardship that comes into, because, you hear, though I've heard before people say, like, a woman cannot raise a man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And things of that nature. Without that male influence, what is she supposed to teach him with things she actually just physically doesn't have?
Yeah.
And I feel like there's so much power in this scripture that says while he was living in the desert of Paran, meaning Ishmael, his mother got a wife for him from Egypt. So at the end of all of that hardship and at the end of all that struggles, the trials and tribulations that she went through being a single mother, he entrusted her enough to pick his wife. And I wanted to add that she picked an Egyptian wife, which was what she was herself. The impact that you personally will have on your son, because you are his only parental figure, will have such an effect on the generations to come as well, that whatever you feel like you're not getting or what's not happening now will be instilled into the generations after you due to the mother you had to be for him. You get what I'm saying? So I felt like that was something that stuck out to me. And literally that was not anything I wrote down in my notes because I didn't have the original perspective of it coming from a single Black woman. But now that we have this conversation, I just find that to be something that sticks out to me. And I found that to be pretty interesting.
But even what you're saying is comforting to me, because in my notes I have, like, they went on and because I did a lot of cross-referencing, and in my Bible it told me, like, when God, it gets to the point where it says God blessed him and he heard his cries and he fulfilled his promises, it gives me little annotations to where to go back. And when I flip back and forward to different places, it shows, it like foreshadows, and I don't know the other word of looking forward or whatever, but it shows where God referenced the things that he would do for Ishmael to Abraham and also to Hagar before everything ever transpired.
Right,
and he ended up becoming what he wanted to become. And then furthermore, he becomes a husband. He becomes a husband and he becomes his own leader of nation. And he has all, God kept all the promises that he said. And so then with your added layer, it was so comforting to me to know, because as a single mother, I always debate in my mind, like, I don't want my son to shy away from Black women, or I don't want him to create this image in his head that Black women are supposed to endure this certain type of heaviness that, is caused upon them and be treated a certain way. Because I feel like, so many Black men that are raised sometimes by single mothers, or it don't even have to be single mothers, but mothers that are not being loved properly, they have this idea in their mind that Black women can endure this level of pain. And some men test it to just see how far that goes and do more damage than actually healing. But in the sense, I don't want him to shy away from a Black woman because, oh, we're hard or we're tough or we can do things independently. I'm not doing things independently because I want to. It's because I have to. So when you encounter another Black woman, I don't want to raise a son that doesn't take initiative to nurture that Black woman or to take care of her or to do the things just because, oh, I seen my mama do it by herself, so you can do it by yourself. I don't want that for my son. I don't want that for another Black woman. So if I'm raising a child that I want to, grow up like what I would dream to have or to want him to bless another woman with, I always think in my mind of, like, should I be this way or should I not be this way? Am I causing some type of, or creating some type of narrative that can backfire on me later? But also at the same time, I'm doing what I gotta do. I don't want to be soft on my son just off the strength of I want him to be soft with a woman. It's nobody else here doing this with me. So I have to have a balance between nurturing and discipline. I have to. And sometimes it probably has to lean more to discipline because as humans, not even as men, as humans, discipline is beneficial for us. So I gotta lean into that discipline role more than anything. But I don't want you to look at a black woman as someone that is hard, that is tough, that it, you know that. But maybe that's my connotation of like putting negativity to it, because that doesn't have to be negative. Because also as a black woman, if I think about myself without even being a mother, I love that we are strong. Even though it's not easy, even though it doesn't look good all the time, I love that we are strong and that we can endure certain seasons that some people would fold under, you know? But I don't want him to take advantage of that for someone else, or be it take advantage of for myself personally. So just knowing that, like, I didn't even pay attention to, although he fulfilled all these promises, it was under the leadership of a single black woman. And that's important because in the culture we in today, there's a lot of black men who get on this internet and try to say black women can't raise black men by themselves. They can't raise healthy men. They can't raise sons. And that type of stuff I hear and I see, and it is somewhat in the back of my mind fearful that I'm going to raise an incompetent man, and that's not what I want. And even though that can be popular, or that can be a trend, or that can be a majority, I'm trying to do the opposite. I'm trying to, I guess if it's the miracle, I'm trying to do the miracle. Even though I know there are black men in this world that are raised by single women that are immaculate, but we don't hear about them often and we don't lift them up. So even in this story, if you are a single mother, having your son study the story of Ishmael can be so freeing, because what can you find within that? If you are raised by a single black mother, understanding that that doesn't mean you are hurt, you are traumatized, and you have some lack thereof because your father was not there, and it's some sort of punishment or reason for you to conduct yourselves in any way less than a king, because that man was a king. And even further, a shooter at that. He made him an archer. We got a lot of shooters in the community. And I don't know if that's just because I'm from the Chicago area and that's just what stuck out to me, but it was like, dang, he a shooter? So, but in this sense, though, of him being a shooter, he's not out here shooting his fellow black man. He's not out here fighting with his ops. And that's so freeing, because if I come into a situation where my son is finding a liking to the streets, baby, go look at how this man was a shooter, but he didn't use that to hurt his own people or to hurt people that looked like him. He was hunting. He was bringing food home.
Look, this is a deep analysis.
You feel me? I don't know. That's just how I took it. Like, yeah, you might need to go read that. If my son think he finna be in the streets, nah, you need to go. Ishmael was a shooter, and he wasn't killing people. So figure it out.
Man. Man, oh man. I swear.
Yeah, I love the Bible.
The Bible is a soap opera.
No, for real. No,
it
for real.
Is, I don't know how. I understand people's, hesitance to it just because of like natural doubt that has been instilled in the community and things of that nature. But the Bible is so funny to me. I read it and I'm like, what? Are you serious?
No, for real. For real.
I'm like, there's no way. I know you lying. Like, I know you're lying. She said, what? Shorty is unhinged.
No,
like,
for real.
And that's why a lot of the time that I spent reading the story initially, because I had to like read it like 2-3 times. And I felt the first couple of times I read it, I really tried to dig into why my feelings towards Sarah, or Sarai, I need to say Sarai because she wasn't Sarah yet, but Sarai, why they were so serious. Like, I really had an issue with her.
No, I had an issue with her.
I was like, am I hating? Like, am I judging? Like, what am I feeling? But my problem towards Sarai felt so personal, and I am not a single mother. Yeah. And I have not been put in a position of anything like that. But just her manipulation is what it felt as though she was so impatient that she created a situation believing that she was going to get the benefit out of it, all to not like the decision that she made from the jump, put her husband in a trying position, completely dismissing the feelings of a child that she literally basically created. She created the idea of him. So I don't know. I just had to focus. I had to read the story a few times because
the first time I read it, that's how I felt, and I felt like this is what happens when you don't have God at the center of your relationship. Because
or when you don't,
she
not
never
even
seeked
that.
him. She never sought God and asked if this is what she should do. She never asked for permission. She took matters into her own hands.
That is true, but I mean, I don't. Just because it's not recorded doesn't mean it didn't happen. So she might have been asking. She might have really been asking. And due to not seeing any results is where her impatience picked up. So for me, it's more so like, it's not even about keeping God at the center. It's about not trusting the process. Like truly, because you could believe God and struggle with the process. And I do that on a daily basis. Because there's things that are, why am I not a millionaire today? I believe you said I can have it. Where is it at? So I can struggle with the process and still try to keep him at the center of my heart. But choosing to act.
That was wild.
And like you done gone rogue off of God's plan. That's where I don't see me out here doing a lot of manipulating of the situations to try to speed up a process for some things I want. Maybe because I've already been in a situation when I was younger and I've tried to speed the process up and it was detrimental to me in the long run. So now I do just let things be as they may. But that's what really sticks out to me when it comes to Sarai. Like her impatience was detrimental.
Her manipulation.
That as well. But it wasn't so much as manipulation as though her husband is going to listen to her. And so was her servant. So she didn't have to manipulate them. But she just had to say it.
But when
you need to sleep with him. I want a child. Bet. She did it. Now that she has a child and she sees the threat to her child, she goes to her husband. She needs to go. Bet. And he did it.
The reason why I say her manipulation is because going way further in the chapter, once the kids are here and they're grown and adults, and she gets to the point where she's losing her husband, she uses the younger one to manipulate the father in order to gain the riches because she knows she's closer with the youngest one than she is the oldest one. The oldest one was kind of like Abraham's favorite, and the youngest one was her favorite. And so when it comes to who's next in line for the throne, it's the oldest. But she also knows the oldest probably wouldn't listen to her. She doesn't have much influence over the older one as she does the youngest. So she tricked the youngest to pretend like the oldest because Abraham was blind at this point. So she tricks the youngest to go in and pretend like the oldest in order to get his blessing to have the riches. Backstabbing the oldest one. Don't give a crap about how he feels and what he was supposed to inherit in order to be able to get the youngest to have everything so that it could still be at her disposal. And that's why I say the manipulation, because had she just been patient and let God work through her own things that she needed to work through, and the children came at the same time they would have, she probably would have had that spirit of manipulation off of her, and this wouldn't even be something that'd be going on. Because what type of position do you have to be in to have your two kids going at it with each other over the same amount of riches? Are you crazy? That's crazy. And you're under the assumption he's not leaving you with nothing. He's leaving you with something. But in those times, the sons became the throne. It wasn't like she gained everything like laws would, equate a woman to have now. So she used that even within it. But that's even crazy within. Because if you had your own attachment to both of your kids, it wouldn't matter who got it. They're going to bless you. Right. But knowing off the strength of how you have treated the youngest, so opposed to, right, it's all that selfishness and manipulation. And that came out in her relationship with Hagar, because this woman is here to be your servant, not to be not to be your slave or the person here to make up for your lack thereof. She's not here to be your husband's concubine.
Right, to be the missing puzzle to your dreams.
You feel me? She's not here to do that. She was here to make sure the house was cooked and clean and the children watched after while you do X, Y, and Z. Not here for you to use and manipulate as such and then throw away at your disposal. That's crazy.
Right, and I don't know how it was set up. I don't know if the slaves at that time tend to live with them.
Yeah.
Or if they had their own families and traveled to work. Mm-hmm. But imagine how disruptive it had to be for Hagar
to live there.
Not only to if she did live there, what if she didn't want a child?
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. I don't even want a child, but this is my only means of money, so I'm obeying my boss.
Like, what if, you know what I mean? Like, what if that was never in her plans?
Right.
At all. Mm-hmm. But due to obedience, I had this child, and you over here messing with me.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Come on now. I can't imagine it is easy to be a slave anyways or a servant anyways. So you can assume that I'm already living in hardship and poverty. Mm-hmm. Then you add another mouth to feed on top of that. Mm-hmm. And then you literally jeopardize my entire livelihood on top of that. Mm-hmm. I didn't ask for none of this out of obedience.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I think I would have respected Sarai, although I don't know how Hagar, I know personally if Sarai would have asked me this thing, it would have been no. However, it never says in the Bible.
You don't ask your servants.
No, but I'm saying she never proposed the idea of let us keep the child and you go. You left me with your own responsibility that you asked that for. Now I'm responsible for following your lead. But you never put it on the table to say, let me take care of it. You go get yourself straight, come back later. Or we'll take care of you guys, but y'all need to go. You strictly told that man, get rid of me and my child. You had no remorse for me or another innocent human being that came from your own thirsty interactions. That's wild. That's wild. But people do that. Okay, so that's wild. But in closing with that story, the main things that I had from it was just the importance of like obeying God and moving when he says move. Because when he told her to move, she needed to move. And you need to understand the rest of the process. He was going to work everything out and just have faith and trusting the process. Because as a single mother, like I try to be so controlling or try to foresee or influence what the future might be. When it's already written, it's already there, and all I need to do is continue to focus on God and have faith and let everything fold out the way it folds out.
Amen.
Sarah should have did that too, though.
Please, I need to pray about her. Truly.
Because she got a lot. We're going to have to revisit
I need
that
understanding.
another day. Yeah. We're going to have to revisit Sarah about herself.
I really need understanding on her journey because I don't know if it's where I'm personally at in life or the way I'm interpreting the words that I'm reading, but I got beef with Sarai. So.
Yeah. Okay, so moving along, I seen a question on Threads, and it said, a person watched a TikTok, and it asked, can a person that God has for you cheat on you and still be for you? So in other words, you're going to allow the man God sent to you to cheat on you and you still stay, is what I'm guessing. Or is that grounds for you're not really who God sent for me and I need to move along?
Okay.
Right.
Okay. And a short answer, yes.
Why?
But, so we got our fleshly selves, right? And then we have our spiritual selves. I believe that when engaging in your flesh, you tend to make a lot of stupid decisions that have the ability to jeopardize your spiritual or long-term blessings, destiny, whatever word you want to use. But what is ordained to happen in your life, I believe that it's going to happen, period. Do you have the ability to fall off, get distracted, and fall into temptation? during that process, yeah, you do. So while my husband, who was given to me by God, while that might be a very spiritual and godly ordained bond, is he still human? Yes. Are there times when this man might lose focus and fall into temptation? That's a possibility I don't want to imagine. Doesn't mean it cannot be a truth for me or anybody else. So I think when people hear God
It's a level
and
of
cheating
perfection.
in the same sentence, they conflict, because when you think of God, like you said, you think of perfection. So how could God send you somebody who got the thoughts of a cheater? I don't really think it works like that. I think God sent you somebody knowing what they had in them to be with you and what y'all could create together. But because we are of flesh initially, he has the ability to fall into temptation and do things that may not be favorable to your marriage or God's eyes anyways. So it's not necessarily about like, oh, God, like, because when you set it up like that, it sounds like God will put you in a messy situation.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that to be the case.
Yeah.
Quite frankly,
Yeah.
that is not the God that I believe. So I don't think that I just don't put it, I don't know. I think, because I feel like I have been, there's a lot of times when people ask me questions about possible scenarios and people are very shocked by my answers, assuming that like I just allow a lot of things to slide. That's not what it is at all. For me, I understand we're human. And I think that's the main part for me. Like, not saying like, oh, I'm not saying I'm a stranger to doing it. Nothing like that. But I understand the capacity of which humans operate in. We fail.
Yeah.
We tend to fail, and
Yeah.
that's how we grow and learn anyways. I'm not saying that maybe cheating is what needs to happen for certain things to be realized, but sometimes that's how it works out.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so for me, I think that scenario would be damning and unfortunate, and I'd be praying to God and looking at him like, who the hell did you send me?
Yeah.
For real, because you could take him back. Like,
Yeah. No, for
don't
real.
want him. But I'm not going to sit here and act like the person that I am ordained to be with or I choose to be with is Jesus Christ himself, who walks in perfection. I don't have that expectation on any person.
Yeah.
Because they're not Jesus.
Yeah.
And I also don't want that expectation on me,
Yeah.
quite frankly.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it. But I feel like if, let's say, you're operating in your spirituality all the time and you're always walking with God, which is not how people operate on earth
And that's true.
at all. But hypothetically speaking, if we got to make up the world and the utopia that we lived in, absolutely not. My husband wouldn't do nothing like that, and I would not go for it. No. But even if I go through it, doesn't mean I went for it.
Yeah.
It's just something I had to battle.
Yeah.
But if I'm godly ordained in my marriage, I know that though he made a mistake, this is still my person, and I need to learn to work through it, which is also part of trusting the journey, like we talked about.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people believe that trusting the journey with God means an easy path and all things that glitter and gold. But there's so many stories in the Bible, like Job or Daniel or Joshua or Joseph. All these people went through things that we would run away from if we had the opportunity to, but if they trusted the process, they received the blessing they were supposed to get. So I'm big on just trusting the process. And yeah, people make mistakes in between that, but who am I to judge you for a character flaw or a bad moment or a bad taste in judgment in a situation? I'm not doing it. I also have more things to worry about than everything that you clocking every action you make outside of what you do in front of my face.
Yeah.
So I don't even want somebody to think that if they were cheating, that's something I'd be clocking for real, because I want you to believe that I am busy focusing on the things I'm supposed to be focusing on. So you cheating is literally your character flaw.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with what I got over there.
Yeah.
And that's because I've healed from being in a situation like that before. I'm not claiming your cheating as a flaw on my end. That's a flaw on your end.
Yeah.
If I were to find myself in a situation today, God forbid, where I am with a man and he cheats on me, I'm not going to sit here like, what's wrong with me, or am I not worth it, or what could I have done? No, I'm not looking at it like that at all, like I would have maybe 10 years ago. I'm going to look at it like, I don't know what you got going on, but you might want to step aside and figure that out. Because you're not about to interrupt my journey and my healing process because you haven't figured out your demons. I'm not entertaining that.
Yeah. That's good. Because that ain't how I felt when you first said it. I was like, what? God would never do that to me. But even in my own talking, I said, like, it's the level of perfection. That's why I said that. Like, it's the level of perfection that comes with things that God would give you. But it's also understanding that, like, we're human, though. We're not God. And so we still are subject to these humanly things. And so when I heard it, I was just like, why would he do that to me? He wouldn't cause that for me. But understanding and really, really applying the Bible and really applying situations, that, like you say, is a character flaw. And I didn't think that it equated to my worth. It was just more of, you're not ready for what I'm ready for. But then if I'm really being honest with myself and how I move, I could be the one that does the cheating. And I don't want to be left. So please give me another try.
And that's not taking ownership on the trait of that's what I plan or foresee happening. Yeah. But that is you acknowledging that you're not a perfect person. Yeah. And that you will make mistakes. And those mistakes might go against what you actually genuinely want. Right. And though you, like, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm not, again, I'm not condoning anything of that nature, but I'm just saying, and I don't know if it has to do with, like, this is the reason I chose psychology, just to understand people, humans, and emotions and how we feel. So when it comes to people making mistakes, where others might blow up off of a lack of understanding, I sit there and I'm like, that was so wrong, but I get it. Like, I genuinely get the mindset you were in and why that action even happened. I have a lot more understanding and compassion behind mistakes. Don't tolerate it. Doesn't mean I'm as forgiving as I could be, but either way, like, I get it. Doesn't make it right. But I don't want to be penalized long term for a temporary lack of judgment that I had in a moment. Yeah. Regardless of what those feelings were, regardless of whether they were right or wrong. Yeah. I just give people a little bit more grace when it comes to mistakes, because I get it. Like, your mental and emotional process at the time has a great impact on what your physical actions produce. Yeah, yeah. And
because cheating for a person that's not walking with God is much different from a person who's not walking with God. I feel like a person who might make a mistake that is walking with God would probably take a little more accountability, maybe would be more in a place of trying to, correct the action or, face whatever is within to make sure that doesn't happen again, opposed to a person who's not walking with God and then they do that mistake. This might be a repetitive thing. We're not about to make this a repetitive thing. And it's like, from being in a situation where it became repetitive, it's like, when I hear that question, no, God not doing that to me, because I've already dealt with somebody. I've let it slide and tolerated so much.
Right, however, but it's not even about that.
Right. Yeah. And so, like, when you are in a different space and that does happen, like, we are all weak. And it's not to say, because I also seen something this week where it was like, would you give your person a cheating pass, or how many cheating passes
or like a hall pass or
right,
something like
and
that?
How many would you give them? And when I'm hearing, I'm not giving them none. But realistically, though, I've been in a situation where I can't even say I gave 3. I gave many. However, when you're in love with somebody, or you think you're in, or what you believe love to be, you will deal with certain things of such. But now that I'm more in a different healed space than I am before, I'm not going to say, a person can have 3 times and I'm up. You can have no times.
Period.
Now, when we get to a bridge, we'll determine how we'll cross it.
Right, and when you say
but I'm not giving out passes like, here you go, here's 3 cheating passes. No. Use them as you please. I won't say anything until those 3 are gone.
That's not even how that went. When I unfortunately can say I've been a victim of being cheated on. Yeah. And though I stayed, which would look like he got a pass, right, it was not a pass. Right. I was hurting through that entire time, trying to find a better ending than what was my reality. I don't think it was more so I gave him a pass. I think it was more so of me trying to understand and grow in that place that I needed to, which kind of really had nothing to do with what he did. His action just changed the trajectory of my thoughts to where it needed to go.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I think I'm all in love and this is my end all be all.
Right, yeah.
But this situation has me feeling like I'm about to die because this hurts so bad.
Yeah.
And I don't know how tomorrow's going to be and how I'm going to get through that. But then having that mental space led me to, I need to focus. I need to find my priorities. Then I start jumping back on my priorities, going back to the gym, eating right, getting rid of old habits, trying to separate myself from the pain, from what caused me pain in the first place.
Yeah.
And then I found myself on this upward trajectory of success. I believe that was the purpose of that situation happening. I think it could have been a different situation that would have changed the trajectory of those thoughts, but it just happened to be cheating. That set me down that path of like, let me get myself together because putting everything into him is leaving me desolate at the end. And I think that was the point. But when I think of like God, I just don't think God would ever put me in a position to where I have to battle with something like cheating and me thinking like my life is over because of it. I really don't see it like that.
Yeah. I think that question is definitely based off experience and perspective, and it's really hard to really identify one answer because sometimes God will bring you your partner when you are the best version of yourself, and sometimes for some people that's not the case, and you have to grow in a certain situation and seasons with a certain person. So if I was to meet my partner who is my forever guy when I was 18, that's a wild journey, opposed to if I was supposed to meet or he's planned for me to meet my person 2 years from right now. That's a whole nother person. So some people can meet their person when they are young and grow through all these seasons and never have to endure divorce, and let's just per se that is the God-ordained person for them. They got to grow through a lot of different things, and cheating might be on the table and it might not, but other issues do look difficult just as much as cheating looks and having to deal with. So it's like growing through all of that with a person, you would think like, this is not what he had for me because this is crazy.
I mean, God does not condone adultery.
No,
that is literally one of the commandments.
Right. So that's why
at the end of the day, absolutely. That's why my answer to saying like, oh, can your person be from God and he still cheat? Well, yeah, he can be from God. Him cheating is a him action.
Right.
That has nothing to do with God.
And that's why I say associated with the item of perfection, that God's going to send you this perfect person that wouldn't do such a thing and just eliminate the human factor in
well, don't send me no random human. If you're going to send me a perfect person, please send me Jesus.
No. Jesus was single with no kids.
And don't give me nobody else.
You feel me? He wasn't playing that.
If you want to send me perfection, that's who I want. That is exactly who I want. But he doesn't send you someone who's perfect.
And it reminds me of that space in the Bible. I have to look it up. But it reminds me of that space in the Bible where it talks about there's no difference in being single and being married. And oftentimes humans try to put a highlight on, you know, marriage being this ultimate thing and this level of achievement or hierarchy that you have as a person. But he explains, like Paul breaks it down, that there's no difference in being single and being married. There's benefits with both and there's troubles with both. And one is not better than the other. If you think it's hard to stay single and not, you know, throw your body around to whomever, it's just as hard to be married and be committed to just one person, because the same temptation you face as trying to keep your single body, you know, not dispersed to everyone, is the same temptation you face, you know, when you're seeing all these beautiful and enticeful things and you're trying to keep it with just one person. It's no different. So you have to pick your poison. You know, whichever one you choose. And it's no different in the problems that you face on having to come to compromise and agreements with one person is no different than the decisions and the pressure you face having to decide as a single person. So, like, that's a whole nother conversation for another day. And like you said, we hungry, so we're gonna close in prayer per usual as always. Father God, I just want to thank you for giving us this space to come and share thoughts and share ideas. God, we thank you for opening up our hearts and our minds for interpretation to receive whatever it is that you are trying to speak to us and to others, and moving through this conversation, being present in this conversation. God, if there is anything that you are needing us to understand, to reveal, to walk through, to receive healing for, I pray that you allow this to touch whomever it needs to and offer some type of peace and healing through all our listeners. We thank you for this time and this freedom to be able to come together and to do such a thing. And, we love you. We love you through everything. You are everything
to me.
Until next time, y'all please stay blessed.
Amen. Thank you for listening.